Welcome to the lecture on defining sub namespaces. So if you go to example 2 in the namespace folder, you can find the logical flow and the deliverables. Logical flow is to define and learn sub namespaces. And this is the file we'll create define sub namespaces. So obviously we'll create some namespace file and then we'll include them in the define sub namespaces file. So let's quickly create this file. Let's save this file. Okay, I'll create two more files. I'll call it namespace constant 2.1. I'll create one more file and I'll call it 2.2. Okay, so I have two namespace files and I'll include both of this namespace file in define sub namespaces, and we'll create sub namespace, means we'll create a folder inside a folder. So let's define a sub namespace. Namespace so we'll say namespace. Now you can say sub namespaces slash sub1. Okay, often at times you will find a situation wherein your sub namespaces has to be unique, but the inside the sub namespace you want to have as different small sections of namespaces. Okay, let's say a good example of this one is you will say, okay, you want to define some library called string, and inside the string you have to have a section on cleaning the strings. You want to have find, replace. So there will be cases wherein you're defining a namespaces, but you want to have sub namespaces just to have similar operations on the same namespace that you have. Well, that is the logical representation of how you want to organize your namespaces. It's just an example. Okay, you can choose to have one namespace and dump everything inside, or you can choose to have sub namespaces so that you organize your code into smaller logical units. Okay, so how you define it, you can use slash in these sub namespaces to differentiate between one namespace and another namespace. So this is basically a parent and this becomes a child. Okay, so we just define one constant here and we'll still say the file name. We'll say sub1. Constants 2-1.php.phpol. Okay, so this is one namespace. You can copy paste in another namespace and you call it 2, and we can just change some text in it. It's just a text, dummy text. It's a constant, and we'll try to access both of this namespace from the define sub namespaces, and we'll see how to call a constant from a sub namespace. Okay, so let's go to define constants. Okay, the first thing you have to do is you have to include those namespace files. Okay, so we'll include the namespace file and then we will say include okay, so we have included the namespaces here, both the namespace file. Now how to access these sub namespaces? Okay, you can simply say sub. You can actually copy that over from here, okay, so that we don't make a mistake. You can say sub namespaces slash file underscore name. Okay, it's as simple as that. There's nothing fancy, it's just the slash notation will create a sub namespaces. Okay, and you can have n number of sub namespaces. You can have a slash b slash c slash x. Okay, n number of it, right? It's like a folder structure that you're creating. Okay, so let's execute this. We'll make it to 2 and it's 2 here. Okay, so you can run this sub namespace file and you can find sub1 and sub2. These are the constants name coming up from the sub namespaces. So these are the constant names that whatever you have given here is printed here. Okay, so this is the way you create a sub namespaces. You create a sub namespace, and then this is the way you actually access the constants from the sub namespaces. Okay, the most important thing that you have to remember is how do you create sub namespaces and how do you access them. Well, that all happens with the backslash, and using backslash you can create n number of sub namespaces. Well, that's all about sub namespaces, and I'll see you in the next one.